Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Serverless Cast. We're coming to you live from the massive outdoor studios down by the highway in Austin at Serverless Conference. We have a super interesting guest here in Matt Weigel.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. And so, Matt, what I really wanted to do was talk a little bit about your kind of product project. We'll get into that in a little bit. But before we did that, I really wanted to kind of get your take on state of serverless conference, because you're kind of one of the super early guys in to this concept, right? And so what was the origins of like your journey into all of this?
So my journey, my journey started sort of as SRE style manager at Adobe and seeing how much time my team spent doing operations. And I had stepped away from Adobe, but it had always stuck with me how much time my team had spent doing that. And I saw serverless as a way to help offload some of those responsibilities. Definitely not abdicate them, but help us get to the cloud faster so that we could focus on our core business.
Yep.
And so that was really the origin of why I thought it was an interesting technology. And also seeing sort of the architectural patterns that were evolving. Serverless seemed like sort of the natural end state for a lot of those. Event-based, isolated, 12-factor, a lot of these different trends converging to serverless. And so that was sort of, you see those trends happening and you think, I should get in early because I think it might be big.
Right. And it was really nice to, this is my first serverless conference, and it was really nice to kind of meet everyone face-to-face that you've kind of Twitter known.
Yep.
For a while now, right?
Definitely.
And we were just talking that you were kind of the same way. We didn't, depending on how you look at it, and if you know the history of the first serverless conference, there's a bit of pride in that it was in Brooklyn, if I remember correctly.
It was in a warehouse in Brooklyn.
And it had no heat. And was nasty and hot. And so,
yes.
Some people are very proud that they went to the first one, and some people aren't. And so I feel like this has grown up, though. I wasn't able to make London, but this is a really nice conference, really good venue.
Yeah, I think it's shown a lot of growth over the past couple conferences to be here now.
Absolutely. And what has been what have you really liked? What have been your takeaways? What has been your impressions?
I think my general takeaway is the excitement and the diversity of the audience. I've talked to vendor providers, obviously, but also enterprises that are looking to complement their lift and shift strategy with serverless, startups that are looking to minimize their upfront investment so they can get better pricing or faster time to market, people that are trying to supplement vendor providers with observability tools and things like that, and just a real diverse type and array of customers and participants, and everyone generally being optimistic in terms of where it's going. I know there's, serverless, we're not going to go into what does it mean, but in general, there's a sense that whatever it means, it's something that I think has a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, and also add, too, what I really like about it is there's so many practitioners here.
Yes.
And not to pick on some of the other projects I've been involved with too much in the past, but I'm going to a little bit. The idea, you have this idea, this concept, this technology wave, if you will, right? And everyone wants to start riding it, right? And you have the folks that kind of get in early, but it's the folks that get in super early are the folks that really just want to solve problems.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, then a lot of folks kind of go, when I say folks, I say the vendors, kind of go, hey, that looks cool. There might be money to be made on that. And then you kind of get the vendors swooping in.
There is a tendency for sort of lead generation, I think is what they call it.
Yes, that's right.
The first movers sort of, they're the pioneers, and then providing insight for vendors to come in. And I think right now it's still early, so there are people now that are, vendors are coming in. And even the vendors, I run the Seattle Serverless Meetup, and even there's an open conversation among the vendors, because I think everyone is still trying to figure out sort of where it should go. I think everyone sees how powerful it could be, but it's still early.
That's a great point, talking about Seattle specifically, because you run the meetups up there. You also run the serverless Slack channel that some people may or may not know about.
They do.
And so tell everyone a little bit about that and how they could get involved if they want to.
Definitely. So the Serverless Slack forum is a general channel for practitioners, for vendors, for people who are just using serverless, who aren't framework providers, just anyone who's involved in the community, a common place for everyone to come and have a dialogue. It's meant to be a shared space for everyone to participate. It started after the serverless serverless conference in Brooklyn, and there's a automatic Auth 0 powered web task invite if you'd like to join. And I think we can probably attach that to the show notes at the end.
Yes.
If people would like to join. Very open community, very friendly. If you have vendor-specific questions, there's vendor-specific channels, and there's also a general channel if you just kind of want to talk serverless.
Yeah, and I would add, too, I've been a member of that community for a while, and it's just a fantastic community of a lot of folks that just kind of want to roll up their sleeves, and a combination of learn a lot and get shit done.
There's a lot of GSD.
Yeah. But I would say this, too, and I'd actually say this about this entire community in general. It's very inviting. Mm-hmm. You know, some of the communities tend to have a high barrier to entry and a little bit of like, you're not worthy to be in this. You don't have that at all here.
No,
There's very low ego in a lot of the serverless, which I found, which is very fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that's because it's very open, because it's early, and also because it supports a lot of different architectural patterns and languages. So it really has to be welcoming to everyone. And a lot of people that are early movers in serverless have run things in production for long periods of time, and we know that, you know, we all have to work together if we want it to work well.
It's a solve the shared pain model.
It is a solve the shared, and there's so much pain that goes around.
So let's talk a little bit about your project as well. So make sure I get this correctly. I want to get the website is GoSparta.io.
That's correct.
And Go framework for Lambda?
Yeah, so it's a Go framework for AWS Lambda, and what it tries to do is it provides a framework so you can write a standard Go application, use all the standard Go software development lifecycle tools like unit testing, documentation, things like that, but then leverage the power of serverless when it comes to deploy. So it has enough knowledge built in so it can do things like auto-marshal your code to CloudFormation, implicitly give you infrastructure as code, allow you to hook up CloudWatch monitoring, metrics, and deploy all of that through CloudFormation. And if you, at some point, you know, maybe you start going all serverless and then your business evolves and you'd like to shift some of your microservice domain to, say, a container, you're able to say, I'd like these functions to run as serverless, I'd like these other functions to run in a container, but you can you provision them all in Amazon as a single operation. So it's really trying to give you a nice, graceful onboarding path using the existing development metaphor, but then leveraging serverless when you get to the cloud.
Gotcha. And what are some of the, this is kind of the standard question we're asking everyone at the conference here because people are still wrapping their head around everything. Yeah. What are kind of some of the use cases that are really sticking?
I think some of the use cases, I think because it's early and a lot of people sort of want to get their feet wet, cron-style jobs, continual compliance-style jobs, event-based jobs where they're manipulating data, say from a Kinesis stream into an Elk stack or something like that, where they're doing data transformations that are non-critical path or non-latency sensitive. Those are the first sort of the perimeter where people get into serverless. I think we'll start to see more, I hesitate to use the M word, microservice, but I think we'll start to see more microservices that are serverless based, that use functions to implement some bounded context of functionality. But I think I think it takes a bit of time for people to get comfortable with observability and deployability and getting your team on board with it before you're willing to sort of commit to that next jump.
Sure. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now, either in Lambda or just in the framework in general?
I think there's two. So if you have an existing application, it can be a monolith, elegant or otherwise, or a microlith. Over the years...
microlith. I haven't heard that one yet.
I think I just made that up.
You heard it here first.
Exactly. I'm just quickly going to hover. If you have those kinds of code bases, you may have accumulated a lot of accidental complexity along the way as you've sort of gone through your migration. And serverless really is an opportunity for you to rethink your application and build from the cloud down rather than take your application up. So a lot of it is sort of reframing your problem and focusing on your business logic and pulling apart independent concerns. So that's one area that's kind of a development process. And there's definitely an operational and observability problem. There's no chance to SSH and strace. Not that that's often a recommended best practice, but I'm sure many listeners have done that. I know I have. But you really need to think about how can I make this ephemeral service that only exists on demand, how can I get observability? How can I get introspection? How can I replay failed events? How do I handle If serverless is very good for spiky workloads, I also need to think about that when I provision, say, my I/O for my database, right? How do I make sure that all of those pieces together work well? And I think that's still a challenge.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Lastly, this is kind of a crystal ball question for you. So there are no wrong answers. Where do you think serverless in general has to go or has to evolve to next to kind of increase the growth and increase the adoption?
I think customer stories like Nordstrom and iRobot, those are very compelling customer stories about how customers have put it in practice and seen either significant agility velocity gains for development or cost savings. I think those are really compelling use cases. And I think the tooling and developer experience, that's another area for growth. And observability, it's just, I think we've accumulated a lot of these discrete domains, and serverless, I think you get to that complexity sooner. You're going to hit that complexity with VMs, with Docker, but serverless, you can run into that complexity by the end of the day. And it's just sort of recognizing that there's this wall of complexity and, the Death Star architectures that you might run into. You can run into them by Friday if you start on Monday.
Sure.
And that's just something that, you have to continue to keep under control as you continue to evolve your service.
No, great points as well. So, Matt, where can everyone else find out more about you, find out about GoSparta, find out about the serverless?
I am on Twitter at mweagle, MWEAGLE. I'm also in the Gophers Slack group, and I'm the admin for the serverless Slack forum. And there'll be an invite link in the show notes. And I'm also a host of the Seattle Serverless Meetup. And I would love anyone who's in the Pacific Northwest to drop me a line and talk about presenting.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.